Today I'm going to be covering some custom content. I'm going to be building it in the Fantasy Grounds platform, but I'm also using other tools outside of Fantasy Grounds to clean up some of the content that I'm creating. Namely, I'm going to import a map that I created with an AI generator, and I'm going to use this map align utility, which will help make sure that the grid is lined up even before I import it into Fantasy Grounds. So I don't really trust the output or the rendering that comes out of a AI program. It's much better to just buy a map from a third-party person so that they can create it for you the way you want. But if you don't have the time to wait and you need to get something out quickly, which I do, I've got a Saturday game that I want to run. So I'm just going to, I created my own kind of map through AI. And what I'm going to do is edit it and make sure that it can fit in Fantasy Grounds correctly with the right grid. So I'm going to use this map align program, which is free. It's on the Fantasy Grounds forums, and I will put it in the end of the video for the chat part or the description. It takes a little getting used to, but there is a video attached to it, and then there's the file itself. So those are the tools that I'm using in regards to how to use it. But essentially, you start in one corner and you kind of work your way across, and then you go the other direction. So it's kind of like you're stretching the image, and it can get a little bit confusing because it might seem like it's moving, but it's actually stretching the image. So I'm also using Canva to embellish the image if I need to kind of make it look cooler. Those sort of things. So I'm going to pull up the program that I have right now. And so here's the map that was created with an AI app. It's not bad. I mean, it's not a super high resolution image, but I think it'll do the trick. The theme of this horror is going to be kind of a spider-based thing. I got this weird creature I'm working on. So I want to check the grid out. And the first thing you do is you try to define the grid size right away before you start stretching and moving anything around. So you can left-click and drag on any open square just to get an idea for the actual size. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. So I'm going to left-click in the corner of one of these grids and drag until I get close to the dimensions of this actual square. So when I let go, you'll see that the dimension output here is 27 by 26, which is kind of close, but as you see, it's off in other areas because it is not fully square. And this is exactly why I'm using this program, is so that I can restretch the map so it actually fits and the grids line up. So the first thing I want to do is work on the width and the height, because those have to match regardless. And what I kind of have right now is a rectangle, and you'll find that with maps that you source online, that they won't be even. Someone's already stretched it, or it was painted and it wasn't really accurately painted. So it's kind of off, and it's not actually square or 90 degrees or whatever. So that's why I'm doing this. So you have these tile increments in width and height. So you only want to adjust one or the other. So this one's at 27 by 26. So I want to adjust one or the other. So I guess I'm going to work with height first. You have 1/100th and 1/10th and 1/8. I generally don't use the +1. It's usually too drastic of a change. I usually stick within this region, so I'm going to go ahead and hit it by 1/10th and see what we get. And what I'm paying attention to is the input tile. So right now it's set at 27 by 26, which is what I originally traced around, which is close, but not quite. So I'm going to go ahead and hit this plus button, and what I'm going to be doing is increasing this size to match the 27. So I'm only going in 1/10th intervals. So it's set at the actual width that I want. And now I'm going to actually move the grid, and then I'm going to start working on stretching the map. So I'm going to get it kind of square and then start working on it. So the next thing is to increase, and you can set your output. So my output size is going to be 70 pixels per inch, and the original file was 1024 by 1024, but once I'm done, the output is going to be like double that. It's going to be like here it says 2730. So generally you want to keep your map sizes a little smaller than that. So what I might do instead of doing 70 is maybe I'll do 50 or 60. And that will help keep the file size down, but at the risk of changing the resolution to where the map doesn't look very good. So I'm going to leave it there for now and see what the end result is. But if you need to save room, you can do that. The other thing you can do is after you're done and you export the image, you can convert it to a WebP or WebM file, which will make the file size a lot smaller, which is good for your table. And then as far as the dimensions go, it's not too bad. This is 39 by 39 tiles. It's a little bit big for a battle map, but it's not too bad. I think anything around 30 or less is better in regards to overall size versus your output tile size, those sort of things. So it kind of depends on what the map is for. In this case, this is going to be a tactical battle map, so I want it to be accurate. I do want it to fit. I want it to, line up and everything. So I'm going to do that now in this app or program until I get it square. So right now it's kind of off right now, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the grid. I don't want to move the tile width because I want it to stay 27 by 27. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of nudge this over to get it closer. And then the up and down part of it, I'm going to fix that too. So you might have to go with like 26.5 or something like that. So I might do that instead, but for the time being, I'm just going to use this as a starting point and then work my way over across the map horizontally, and then I'm going to go up and down. So this is the strategy on how you want to make the adjustments. So no more moving the grid around. We're going to start stretching the map. So I'm only worried about left to right at this moment. It looks like it's kind of okay over here, but then it kind of gets off as it goes further over. So you want to use these squares as a point of reference and move over as you adjust. So for right now, I'm going to increase the width. I'm not going to touch the height. So I'm only going to be working on the width between these two squares. So I want to start over here in this corner and work my way over. So as you can see, this is off quite a bit here. And that's kind of the thing you want to look at when you start doing this. So this doesn't look too bad over here, but as you get further away, as you can see, it gets way off. So this is actually not a square image at all. The map itself, how it was rendered. So I'm going to go down and start messing around with the pixel width. Right now it looks to me like it's a little small. So as I adjust this, it also changes the width overall for the input tile. So I'm trying to get a happy medium of where these things are going to actually line up. And I'm going to do it in increments of 1/10 and 1/100th just to see what happens in regards to the adjustments being made. So I'm shifting these back and forth until these grids actually start lining up better. So, and I'm only working in one direction. If you do both, like vertical and horizontal, you're going to get really confused. So you got to be careful on how much you're adjusting and how much you need to fix and that sort of thing. So I'm just going to keep playing with this, going back and forth until these things start lining up. And what I want to do is expand and contract whatever I need to do. Generally, it's hitting this plus button a few times and then hitting this minus button to kind of get these things to line up. So as you can see, I'm getting a little bit closer to my goal. And you do want to be zoomed in, but you don't want to go past about 800 here in scale, 800%, because then it gets too big and it's really tough on your computer. So going to kind of look at this square here and work off that and then work my way over. So that's how you use the program. So you start from left to right, top to bottom, or vice versa. So you do all the vertical changes and then you do all the horizontal changes. And if you don't do that, then you're going to get very confused. This moving the grid, it only shifts the grid over. It doesn't stretch the image. So when you touch these width and height in pixels, that actually stretches the image to fit a grid. this move grid actually moves this red grid. So you're technically stretching the image around the grid. You're not moving the grid to fit the image. So you want to make sure you got that kind of in your mind as you're doing this. So that's kind of what I'm doing now. I got a grid here where it looks okay right here in the center, but over here on the right, I think it needs to be a little wider. So on the width panel here, I'm going to use the 1/10 increment because that's actually more of a drastic change. And let's see, so that's going to be about 27. We'll see how it turns out. So 27.5 is what I had estimated. And then going to play around with this here to make sure I got the correct width. So that is that. And now, again, I'm going to start moving it back. So this is a game that you're going to be playing for a while until you get an idea of where you want to go. You don't want to go too far out of your original range. You want to try to stay within as much as possible. Because you make too many changes, it may not come out in the end. So that's something that you got to think about when you're doing these adjustments. So it looked like it kind of shifted it over just a tiny bit. And I'm still back at around 27 pixels. So I need to make let me make a larger change here, which I don't use this 1/8 very often, but it is going to increase the size quite a bit more rapidly. Okay, so that looks a little bit wider, and now I'm going to come back and dial it back in the other direction. And it kind of looks like it got closer, but it's still off quite a bit. So you're going to be playing with this for a while. So until you get used to how the tool behaves and the dimensions of your map, it's going to be a little bit. And I can see already that this thing is kind of off just overall. It's not perfectly square, but I'm going to get it close. So, all right, so that is that. Still not quite wide enough. So I am going to shift this in pixels upward again. So this is going to be in quite a big change, and it's actually shifting the entire thing, the square over, but that's fine because then I'm going to dial it back. And if you want to, you can kind of make you can move the grid, but that's not adjusting for the width of the actual line. So you don't want to move the grid very much, but this is close to where I want it to be as far as width goes. So that's at 28.9 in this area. So now you need to move over again and adjust in another area, like maybe instead of over here in this corner, I might come over here and check this stuff out. And as you can see, it's way off. It's like, it looks good here, but as you get further away, it's way off. So you're going to be adjusting in like quadrants. So you don't get to just move the whole thing. You have to kind of stretch it in sections. So you worked on this top left corner. I'm going to work on the center, and then I'm going to work over here on the right. So now I got to go back in here and see what I did. And see, this got moved over too far. So you're going to be playing with this for a while until you kind of get a better idea of where you should be in the pocket as far as sizing goes and as far as the positioning. So it takes a bit to kind of get used to it, but once you've used this program for a bit, it will fix maps that are off. And that's kind of what I'm doing right now. So that looks okay here, but then see now it's shifted over here. So that's what I'm saying. You have to kind of work from left to right, top to bottom. And if you keep doing this, you're just going to go back and forth, back and forth. It's not going to make this any easier or fun. And see, when I shift the whole grid over, it fixes it in this area, but it's way off over here. So this is what I'm saying. You have to play around with the width. It's not going to be perfectly square until you really get everything dialed in. So I'm just working on left to right or horizontal right now. And then when I'm done, I'll do the up and down part. So it looks to me like I got to find a happy medium between, let's see. So there's that. I need to find a happy medium between both of these adjustments. And that's really what it comes down to. Because as you see, as I'm adjusting here, it's throwing it off over there. So This is actually going to stretch it where it should fit better. You're not always going to have success with this program. Sometimes it just, no matter what you do, if the map is too far off or too messed up, it's not going to help much. It'll just piss you off and make you want to do something else. But I think I can do it. I just wanted to show you the app in case you're not familiar with it. It is a bit of a challenge. It takes time. You got to get used to the shifting, but all I'm doing is clicking on these little plus and minus increments until I get to a happy medium, because if you adjust too much, then it changes it over here. So you got to play with stretching the image is basically what you're doing. And it can be a real burden. So if you're in a big hurry, this is not the program to use. I don't know of any other thing that will fix this, but at least there's a tool out that we can use that kind of helps. So I got closer this time, but I can see that I'm still off quite a bit over here. So I need to expand the width. So rather than doing it like in bigger chunks, I'm doing it in really tiny increments, and it is very painstakingly annoying. But all I'm doing is kind of just hitting this plus button here on the 1/100th and then the 1/10th. I'm kind of coming back to compensate for it. So I'm just kind of finding that happy spot, and I'm thinking it should be about 30 is probably where it's going to end up, because I did want to have 30 by, I think it was originally going to be 72, but yeah, so this actually made it worse. So I'd click that, and I am kind of slowly expanding it in size and then backing it off as I go. So it's just a matter of kind of playing this stretching game until you get it close. So I'm obviously way off here, so I want to see what I can get closer to and then kind of go back. You have to kind of feather it in. You can't just do it all in one shot. It's just no way to do that. But this is Map-Align. It's free on the Fantasy Grounds forums. If you do a search for Map-Align plus Fantasy Grounds, you should take you right to the thread. It is PC only, so if you're using a Mac or something, apologies for that. Nothing I can do about that, but it is a PC program, and I don't know who created it or who made it, but it's on the forums. There's no, I don't know if there's a GitHub for it or what, but it is a handy tool if you have a PC. If you're using a Mac or Linux, I don't know. Unless you have an emulator of some sort, I don't think it's going to work for a Mac. But let's see. So I'm kind of slowly working this in. So it's looking like it's kind of fixing it. And it is something that you got to kind of get used to. Like once in a while you get lucky and you just have to do a couple clicks and it fixes everything. But this map is not, this is AI generated, so it's not going to be perfect. It's going to be kind of messed up. So I got to go in and adjust for that. And if you do too much in one direction, it's going to pull from the other way. So you kind of have to pick your battles with this thing, or otherwise you're going to go nuts. So I'm going to go up to 30 on width and start from there instead, because I'm actually getting closer to what I think is, or 29.5 might be the ticket, but we'll see. So we're talking about the input tile for the pixels on the width only, not the height. So let's see what we got here. So start shifting this over a little bit. Let's see what we got. See if it's closer. And it doesn't look any closer than I had it before. So we have 27 now. So let's go back up. So you're shifting it over and stretching it one way, and then you end up stretching it back the other way, and it can be very frustrating. So just be aware of that. But basically in increments of 1/10 or 1/100th of a pixel, and it's really just, you are messing with like a needle in the haystack. So let me see if I'm any closer. Kinda, sorta, kinda. It did fix it a little. It's still not quite 30. I think that's going to be closer to what I want to be. as far as, so I'm going to bump it up a couple times in the 1/10th range, and now I'm going to push it over to about 30 with the finer increment, and we'll see what happens here. So there's that. This is getting closer to 30. I'm at 29.5, which is about where I thought it would be. And I'm looking at this width only for the actual amount of space that I'm stretching the lines here, or the image. And then I'm just going to shift it over a little if I need to kind of bring it in to see where I'm at in that regard. So every once in a while, I will shift the grid over just to kind of get close to seeing where, yeah, we're kind of getting there. I mean, it's off a little, and as you move over, it's gonna change. So I'm getting it better dialed in here, but now I got to go to the center and start working on that area. So again, I'm going to be looking at this, and now once I set that top left corner, I don't want to move the grid anymore. You keep moving that grid around, you're basically going to screw yourself in other areas. So I got it close all the way up to about here. So now it's starting to go off. So now I need to work in this area and see if I can dial it in here. So I need to go, let's see, this looks a little bit more, I want to say narrow, so maybe 27, and I'll shift it over. Yeah, so it's starting to go the wrong direction. We'll see what happens. So 27, let's see. Yeah, so this can really take some time here. So I'm not going to spend the whole session doing this, but this is what it's going to take if you find a map that isn't actually made for virtual tabletop or wasn't created equally with Fantasy Grounds or with an actual person that made the map. So it's better to have a cartographer, and you won't have to go through as much of this stuff. But this is a tool that you can use to help fix that stuff. So you have partial tile size. Yeah. So there's some tile sizes here that are offset a little bit. So it's kind of giving me an idea of how this is. And sometimes you just have to start over. Like you're just like, screw it. So you could actually go to like the center and kind of go from there and use one of these blocks from there. And if you left click and re-drag, you can kind of reset everything. So what I might do is, let's see if I might just wipe this entire grid. So I'm going to open this file again and see if I can find a different map, because I don't necessarily want to spend hours on a map that's going to take 3 hours just to fix it. So this is a very similar map, very close, and I wanted to start off, so if you've joined later, so your starting point maybe like in the center somewhere, to get the beginnings of this, like your actual start location. So I'll use this little square here, and I'm going to bring it up to 800 because I want to be able to see what I'm doing, and I want to come down to the center. So I'm going to use these sliders on the right and the left to navigate. So this, where I want to go is this square right here. So let me try to go up one. Okay, so this is the actual square. So let me move this down. And this is closer to the center of the map, which is what you want. And now I'm just going to left click and drag and try to get close in regards to where this thing is lining up. And wow, it's over here. It's 24 by 24. Isn't that crazy? So 24 by 25. So it's probably not quite that, but this is a lot closer than what it was before. But then when you look out here in this other area, it's way off. So that's what I'm saying. You have to play around with it to get a good starting point. So I'll use the center as kind of like my guide for the size of the squares. But now, as you can see, they're way off in this direction too. So again, you're going to start over here on one side, so the top left corner in this case. And then what I'll do is I'll just kind of come back here and start playing around with these sizes. So this one seems more like it's going to be 25 by 25. So let me increase the width and see if that helps. I will shift the grid once and then leave it. Excuse me. So here's the grid shift over, and it looks to me like it kind of messed up the overall orientation of it. So I'm going to go back to maybe it was 24 before, and then go back to there. So it's a lot closer that way. So now what I want to do is shift this over and see if I can get it to be a little bit more closer to the actual size. So that's that. And then come back over. You really have to play with it. It does take time. So there's, pluses and minuses to doing it like this. Obviously, it's a big time suck, but you're going to have to figure out a way to adjudicate and to fix this problem as you go, because what I'm seeing here is that every single square is almost a different size. So this may not be the right map to use for this, because usually when you make these adjustments, there's only a few minor adjustments. You're not normally spending a lot of time doing this. So we'll see. It can happen now, so that didn't help. What's weird is it moves the grid as well, and it can get a little bit confusing, but it's actually widening the image. It's not moving the grid, actually. So it's fixed over here. This looks pretty good on the left, but then when you mess around with it over here, it can really change a lot of things. So I'm going to go ahead and do that and call it good, and then slightly move the image over, and now work on this area and just kind of keep at it. This is where you actually gain, or where you're going to start noticing the changes that you've made. Yeah, this map is really jacked up. It's not even close. So this is what I'm saying. This map looks good, like from a distance, but when you actually throw a grid on it, it is messed up. So it's one of those things where you have to decide, okay, is this even worth my time? That's the other thing, is you might just give up and say, hell with it. But I'm going to actually see this through. I'm going to come back and post this somewhere, at least the results, on my on the YouTube channel at the end of the video, and I'll let you guys know if I was successful, and maybe I can find a way to post a screenshot. But essentially, what I'll do is if I get it to work, I'll put it in Fantasy Grounds and I'll put line of sight on it, and then I'll show that off later. But anyhow, that's what I'm using right now. This is the battle I have in front of me, and I'm going to do the best I can and not get all pissed off. This isn't no deadline or priority to this. It's a lot of practice, to be honest, and just kind of showing the community some of the tools that are out there. So